Welcome to LiCAS.news. I'm Shirley Benedictos, and these are our headlines this week. Pope Francis calls for a global COVID-19 recovery plan. Contempt for human rights marked global response to pandemic, says Amnesty International. Cardinal of Myanmar reiterates call for nonviolence on Easter. Pope Francis prays for flood victims in Indonesia and East Timor. Asia's rising coronavirus cases a worry as vaccine doubts cloud campaigns. Number of jobless Filipinos continues to rise during the pandemic. Swiss theologian Hans Küng dies at 93. And now to our stories. Pope Francis appealed for a global recovery plan for the coronavirus pandemic in a message to the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund on April 8. He noted that while many countries are consolidating individual recovery plans, there remains an urgent need for a global plan. The Pope stressed the need to create new or regenerate existing institutions to advance the integral human development of all peoples. He urged the financial institutions to give poorer and less developed nations an effective share in decision-making and facilitating access to the international market. Global response to the coronavirus pandemic has been tainted with opportunism and total contempt for human rights by many global leaders, resulting in failure. This was the assessment made by human rights group Amnesty International in its annual report released this week. The report said there was a spectrum of responses from various world leaders, from the mediocre to the mendacious, and from the selfish to the fraudulent. Agnes Callamard, Secretary General of Amnesty International, said some particularly virulent strain of leaders even used the pandemic as an opportunity to entrench their own power. Myanmar's Catholic Church leader Charles Mongbo renewed his call for nonviolence on Easter Sunday. Reiterating an earlier message, the Cardinal urged protesters, especially the youth, to adopt nonviolent methods and to not die unnecessarily. Cardinal Bo said the people of Myanmar should not fall into the turf of the enemy, but instead defeat him with love, defeat him with humanity. He called on the people to allow Myanmar to rise with peace and prosperity from the grave of hatred and darkness. Pope Francis expressed his solidarity and prayers for the victims of floods and landslides that hit several islands in Indonesia and East Timor and killed at least 120 people. In his weekly general audience on Wednesday, April 7, the pontiff said he invokes the Lord to receive the dead, comfort their families, and sustain those who have lost their homes. Church aid agency Caritas Indonesia has announced that it has already reached out to affected communities following the disaster caused by a cyclone on Easter Sunday. The Adunara and Alor Islands were among the islands worst hit by the cyclone, with 62 and 21 people dead, respectively. India, South Korea, and Thailand faced mounting coronavirus infections this week, undermining cautious hopes that Asia might be emerging from the worst of the pandemic. India reported a record 126,789 new cases. The third-day tallies have surged to more than 100,000, catching authorities by surprise. More infectious variants of the virus may have played a role in India's surge, some epidemiologists say, with hundreds of cases found of variants first detected in Britain, South Africa, and Brazil. Two other countries that managed to largely keep the coronavirus under control during the first year of the pandemic were also grappling with new waves, though smaller than India's. South Korea reported 700 new cases, while Thailand, which has been planning a cautious reopening of its tourist industry, reported a rise in new daily infections. The number of jobless Filipinos continued to rise this year during the pandemic. Data from the Philippine Statistics Authority in February 2021 show that there are about 4.187 million Filipinos who are now unemployed. The figure put the unemployment rate at 8.8%, the third highest since the jobless rates recorded in April 2020 and July 2020 at 17.6% and 10% respectively. The survey also indicated that the underemployment rate, or the proportion of those already working but still looking for more work or longer working hours, has worsened. The Department of Labor and Employment expects the numbers to increase in the coming months, with about 8,000 workers already displaced during the first 3 days of the lockdown. Swiss theologian Hans Küng, known in the Catholic Church for questioning the doctrine of papal infallibility, died on Tuesday, April 6. He was 93. Küng championed reform of the Catholic Church since its 1962-1965 Second Vatican Council, where he was a young advisor arguing for a decentralized church, married priests, and artificial birth control. He was appointed professor of theology at the University of Tübingen in southwestern Germany in 1960, but the Vatican stripped his license to teach Catholic theology in 1979. Küng, who had Parkinson's disease, was born on March 19, 1928 in Zerzy, Canton of Lucerne, and studied in Rome before being ordained in 1954. In the early 1990s, Küng initiated his global ethic project aimed at describing what the world's religions have in common and establishing a set of common values. And that's all for this week. I'm Shirley Benedictos for LiCAS.news, your independent Catholic news source in Asia.